This is the Team Sidelined podcast, a podcast launched to support the mental game of student athletes during these extraordinary times of COVID-19's impact on life and sport. Brought to you by Sidelined USA. We invite athletes, performance coaches, and resource experts to discuss coping skills, strategies, and mindset work, which have proven to help sidelined athletes face their adversity, build resilience, and forge forward even stronger. And now, here's our host, Executive Director of Sidelined USA, Christine Pinalto.
We've got to be talking about mental health in athletics, which also means we can't be afraid to take on the topics that are especially tough. Suicidal thoughts can no longer be a taboo conversation. There's this myth that talking about suicide can give young people ideas or make them more likely to kill themselves. This is absolutely untrue. The research proves it. Rather than encouraging suicidal behavior, talking openly about suicidal thoughts brings an opportunity for intervention. Struggling athletes often don't know who to talk to about these things. They often feel like maybe they're the only one struggling so deeply, which only adds to the isolation and shame. Talking about it can give a suicidal athlete other options for resolving the deep pain and despair they're experiencing and give them time to rethink their decision. This interview may be the most important interview we've ever done at Sidelined USA. Marcus gets unbelievably vulnerable with us and holds nothing back. If you're an athlete struggling, thank you for showing up for yourself by listening to this. It's our hope that this interview helps you feel less alone and that it plays a key part in leading you to the freedom that comes when you start to talk about these things. And if you're someone who's listening to just learn more about how to help others who are struggling, thank you. Suicide prevention is everybody's responsibility, and you can play an important part. Whoever you are, know that you are important. Know that you matter, and the world is a better place because you're here. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode today.
And now, Game 6. Athletes, thoughts of suicide, and finding light through the darkness, featuring former NFL linebacker Marcus Smith II. Neither Sidelined USA nor its affiliates provide clinical or medical care of any kind via their relationship with Sidelined. At no time should a user have an expectation of clinical care or professional services offered or rendered.
Marcus, thank you so much for being here today to talk about this really important topic. This is where athlete vulnerability really meets its match. And the fact that you're willing to meet with us today and open the conversation for athletes by sharing your story, your personal experience, and what you've gleaned along the way is just tremendous. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me, Christine. I'm really thankful that I get this opportunity to speak about, what happened. And I just want to bring light and help others. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, I read your story on the Players Tribune and was really impacted by it. I would love for you to start off just sharing with us the story of August 16th, 2018.
Yeah, so, man, August 16th was definitely a day that I remember vividly because it was a normal day, and I was playing with the Seattle Seahawks at the time. And that morning, the night before, it was really, the stakes was really high for me. I had just signed a 1-year deal with the Seattle Seahawks. This was what you call a prove it deal. It was a deal that was almost like a make or break for the rest of your career. And I went into it very strong high. I wanted to be able to provide for my family and really, prove that I belong in the NFL. But I still didn't address a lot of the anxiety and the depressions that I was dealing with as a young boy and all the way leading up to. So moving forward to that day, I woke up that morning and, before that, I couldn't sleep that whole night. I was having anxiety attacks in my sleep, and I always would have anxiety attacks in my sleep prior. So if you can imagine, me having anxiety attacks for 7 days, and thinking about being in the NFL and trying to perform at your highest level with no sleep. I had no appetite to eat, and it was like a black cloud was over my head. I was going through depression, and I really didn't even realize it. A lot of coaches were asking me, was I okay? I had bags under my eyes, and I was really still trying to push forward and compete at a high level with nothing in the tank, nothing. And so what the breaking point was for me before the morning of August 16th was that I felt like that I couldn't do what I needed to do on the field. I felt like I was helpless. I felt like I was a vegetable because I couldn't get over whatever this was that had a hold on me. And so that night I couldn't sleep. My wife kept seeing me toss and turn, and I just got tired. I was so fed up to the point where I didn't want to be here anymore. So on August 16th, I woke up and from like an hour of sleep, and I left out the house really fast. I knew what I was going to do, or I knew what I was going to try to do. I didn't tell my wife, and I started to drive to the facility. And as I'm going to the facility, a lot of things are going through my head at this time. But all I could think of was, I need to find a way to hurt myself, or I need to find a way to not be here anymore because I can't deal with this pain anymore. I've been dealing with this for so long. My parents have taught me to mask everything that I'm dealing with. They do the same thing. So I just felt like I was helpless. And as I'm driving to the facility, if you can imagine me going down a hill, it's rocks on the side of the hill. And if you go into these rocks, you are a dead man. You are really a dead man. And as I was driving and I start to tip the car, my wife calls me and I jerk the car back. And I'm still driving. My wife calls me. I jerk the car back, and we're talking on the phone. And she usually calls me before I get to the facility just to check on me to make sure everything's okay. And the first question she asked me was, "How are you doing? Are you okay? Are you ready for the day?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And I just was trying to kill myself before our conversation. And I told her I was fine, and I rushed her to get off the phone so I could proceed to do what I was going to do again. And we got off the phone. And so I started to tip my car again. And like, if you can imagine a wheel being off of, might as well be a cliff because it's a lot of rocks. Seattle is a great place for scenery. So if you can imagine me literally tipping my car again. And as I'm tipping my car again, my mother-in-law calls me. And I get scared and I jerk the car back again, almost wrecking. And she's talking to me on the phone. And in my head, I kid you not, in my head, I was thinking like, God, why won't you let me do this? Mm-hmm. Like, just leave me alone. Like, and I was like talking to her on the phone, and it was almost like she was just keeping me on the phone so I would not do it again. So by the time that I got off the phone with her, I was at the bottom of the hill. And I stopped at the bottom of the hill and I just sat there and I said, what did I just do? It scared the living crap out of me. And I couldn't believe that I was willing to end my life with a baby on the way, with a wife. And I didn't know what I was going through at the time. I didn't know what it was. But after that, I went into the facility. I went to my coaches, Pete Carroll, Clinton Hurt, and I said to them, I can't do this anymore. I have to protect my mental health. I don't know what that looks like, but football is not the most important thing right now. My sanity, me being mentally strong, me being courageous. This is what I need to do right now. So I had to step away from the game, and I literally went to therapy that same day. So that was literally exactly what happened on August 16th. I woke up from a terrible nightmare. I couldn't sleep, and like I could remember my chest, because if you're a person out there and you have anxiety, and when you sleep on your chest, when you have anxiety, it feels like your chest is caving in. So it was almost like I was feeling like I was dying in my sleep already. That's what it felt like. And so when I woke up and I decided to drive to the facility, I already knew that that's I had got to that point where that's what I wanted to do.
Wow. I'm so glad you got those 2 phone calls and that intervened and set you straight on that path to get help. So I know this is sensitive, but like take yourself back to those moments on the edge of the cliff. I want to do a little word association, thinking through how you were feeling about life, how you were feeling about yourself. Just pop out some words and tell us word association wise what you were feeling at that moment.
One of the number one feelings were loneliness. I felt very lonely. I hated myself, just because I felt like something was wrong with me. I felt like I felt like I was the only person dealing with that. So loneliness, and I hated myself. And also, I felt as if I was not being heard. But even though I wasn't being heard, like I would always keep what the whole anxiety and depression thing, I would keep that on the surface. I wouldn't talk about it into details with my wife. So she really didn't understand exactly what I was going through until she came up to the facility and found out what I was trying to do. Mm-hmm. So I felt lonely. I felt I was hating myself. I didn't, and it's kind of hard, but I just really, with her, it was very hard for me to look at myself in the mirror, and I didn't want to look at myself in the mirror because I couldn't believe what I just tried to do.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's exactly what we hear from other athletes who have experienced suicidal thoughts, is the loneliness, the self-hatred, the shame, not only the shame in the moment, but the shame afterwards of realizing that you've got to contend with this reality now that
yes,
you almost did that very thing that would have severe consequences on your family, on your friends, on your community. And you had,
a lot of shame.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's hard to talk about that. So thanks for opening the door there.
Yeah, it gives me goosebumps. But I know that the more I talk about it, the more I'm helping people and the more I'm helping myself as well. And that third thing that you said, the shame, it's something that I know a lot of people feel when they have had those suicidal thoughts, have thought about, and you feel like, man, what is wrong with me? But I just want to tell people that you're not the only one, and that it's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's okay to talk about those things.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Talk to us a little bit, Marcus, about the backstory of how you mentioned it a little bit, alluding to earlier struggles with undiagnosed, depression and anxiety. But tell us a little bit more about the backstory of how you got to that point of hopelessness. What were some of those contributing factors that led you to that point of despair? Anything more that can help kind of flesh out that moment of desperation, just obviously didn't come out of nowhere. So build that out for us a little bit.
Yeah. So, first off, I found out that the anxiety that I had was actually hereditary, and my uncle dealt with that as well, and my mother dealt with it. But the first time that I can remember that anxiety start to take over was that my parents, when they got divorced, my parents being divorced was a very traumatic experience for me as a child, as an 8-year-old. And that was the first time that I had experienced anxiety. And as an 8-year-old, I was also in a depressed state, a very depressed state that normally as an 8-year-old, you really couldn't see that. But in our communities that we come from, that is non-existent. Going to therapy is non-existent. It is something that we don't talk about enough. I was always taught to mask my feelings. I was always taught to, you're a man up. Don't cry. I was always taught to, just figure it out, just push through. So if you can imagine me with every step of my life, with things that would come up, I would just be pushing through. Anxiety would come up, depression would come up, and it would be on and off, and I would just push through and not say nothing. So if you can imagine me being a 26, 27-year-old from 8 years old, trying to push through every single day and pushing those thoughts, pushing the things that I was dealing with in the back of my mind. And all it did was get worse and worse and worse as the years progressed. And I dealt with the same thing in college. But as a college student, I somehow continued to do those same things, but get past that. I still played really well. I still did the things that the coach asked of me. But at the same time, as you get older, those things start to wear down. Those things, as you're like once I got to the NFL, the stakes were higher. The pressure was more. So as I'm getting older, the pressure doesn't stop. It keeps going. And so now I have pressure of family. I have pressure of me playing. I have pressure of fans, me wanting to do the right things for the fans. And that weighed on me a lot. I sat in my room a lot and cried a lot because when I was in Philadelphia, every year, I didn't know why I was dealing with the things that I was dealing with. And it didn't dawn on me to go to therapy. It just didn't. And that's kind of the backstory leading up to Seattle, because every camp in August, I was like a vegetable. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I couldn't eat. It was like I didn't have an appetite to eat. And this was pretty much every year. Every year this happened until I got to my breaking point and was just fed up and tired.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. We'll get into some more of the details of your thoughts about those things that played into that a little bit later. Let's talk a little bit about distorted thinking patterns and the role those can play in a person, that pushes them to the point of thinking about ending it all. So what were some of the thoughts going through your head, those kind of lies that were like, replaying in your mind at that moment of despair that were not true, but in the moment they felt they were true?
Man, whew. Uh, I think for me, one of the thoughts that I was thinking, because I was married at the time, one thought was, um, you know, well, if I die, my wife and my daughter they're gonna be fine. Um, that was one thought that was kind of running through my head. I kept trying to find ways to be hurt. So I was like, well, if I drive over in this cliff, you know, it's a possibility that I might be okay. I might not die, or I might still be fine. But in the back of my mind, I knew that that wasn't going to be the case. But I was trying to find ways to hurt myself. I called like the couple of days before. Um, I would call people and just talk to them and just see if they cared about me enough, or did they really want to, find out what was really going on with me, or if I could just, if they asked a question, I could tell them, hey man, this is what I'm feeling. But nobody really gave me the answer that I was looking for.
Mm.
And those three things, those thoughts kind of led me to that point. And it was so hard. It was such a hard thing when I think about it at the time, because it was like I was crying for help, but I didn't want to put myself out there. I didn't want to. I also thought about what people was going to think about me. I thought about my peers, and man, they're going to think I'm weak. They're going to think I'm a, bitch, or they're going to think I'm, crazy, because, people would say about me sometimes, he don't have all his marbles, something ain't right up there. And it wasn't that. It was just, I was dealing with some things that I never spoke about. And those thoughts and those things that I was thinking, in the time of me, about to commit what I was going to commit.
Thank you so much for going there deeply. And I know I told you we were going to do that, and you did that really faithfully. And I know it's not lost on me that is tremendously courageous for you to open up to that level. And I know the reason that you're doing this is because we talked about this earlier. It's when someone else articulates what you're too afraid to say as a person who's deeply struggling at that moment, and you hear somebody else articulate it out loud, there's this unlocking that can happen. And that's the whole goal of this episode, is to help unlock those paths towards getting help, and to help athletes understand that you are not alone. And no matter how deeply you're feeling, even if you sound crazy to yourself, you're not. You're just hurting and you need help. And there are people in your life who care about you and want to help you. And there are paths toward freedom from these feelings and this despair. And I know you mentioned going to therapy was paramount in this. You went that same day. Tell us a little bit about your experience seeking help, and how did that compare? I don't know if you had preconceived ideas of what that would be like, but how did that compare with reality when you did seek help?
Well, I did have preconceived ideas, because what I was taught was that if you go to therapy, it means that you're crazy and that you don't really have all your marbles. But I think for me, when I actually went in therapy, I blamed everything on football. I said football was the cause of this, and football is the reason why I'm here. I was blaming everything on football. But what I started to realize quickly in therapy was that I had been dealing with this for a long time. And I didn't realize that until I actually talked to someone. That Miss Priscilla is her name. And, I still had a preconceived notion about going to someone that didn't necessarily be the same color as me. I was wondering, maybe would she know, or would she be able to kind of give me what I need? But she gave me everything that I need, because it wasn't like she was trying to pull it out of me. It was like I was talking to her, and I can remember just going on and on and on, and just I was just freeing myself, crying, because I hadn't let those same emotions out for years. I hadn't cried like that in years. Um, and, I can remember really being in there, and then she basically helped me reintroduce myself to the real Marcus Smith, the person that I had been the whole time. And it was just, like you said, I was hurting. I can remember leaving that first day. I probably cried for like 3 hours at home with my wife. And 3 hours is like a long time, but 3 hours, it was basically like 3 hours worth of years of not crying, years of not letting go, and just saying, you're more than a conqueror. You are somebody. You're more than a football player. This is just something that you were dealing with that, I really had no idea that I was dealing with. And it's okay to cry. It's okay to weep. It's okay to talk to your therapist. And in my head, it was either talk to my therapist or die. And that's the true, and it's so plain, but that's the true thing that I was thinking, because I wanted to be here, and I knew that I had a purpose. And in therapy, I found my purpose.
That's tremendous. I'm so thankful for Miss Priscilla and her work with you, and your diligence to keep after it, because obviously that doesn't all take place in the first meeting. I mean, I'm sure that there's some frustration along the way as you want to feel different, fast, because you know how badly it feels to be inside your brain, inside your body. But the fact that you had that patience to go through the therapy and take it week by week, and like live off of those takeaways each week, and do the homework and put in the time, just like you did with your training on a physical aspect. It's like that same process when it comes to the mental aspect. It takes some time, and you got to keep your eye on the long game. But if you focus on the long game, you can get frustrated with the day, because you don't feel like you're seeing enough growth. But you didn't become an NFL, elite athlete overnight. I mean, it was drilling it down day by day. Yeah.
Yes. It was a process. It was going in there every day, and really actually, doing the homework, and going back home, and doing techniques, and attacking anxiety head on, not running away from it, not, because this is something that is me. Anxiety is me. I have anxiety. We all have anxiety, but anxiety is a lot of the contributing factor to being depressed, because some people can't get over the anxiety, and they get into a depressed state. And now you're dealing with two things in one. And so that was me. And yes, you are so right. The work still has to be done. And it was very, I did it. It was tough. I would be lying to say if it's not tough, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There is.
There is. That's great. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I wanted to make a note too that, if you're listening and you give therapy a shot, there's a chance you may not have that connection right away with your therapist. So give it some time. And then it is ultimately okay if it's not the right fit for you. You can find another therapist. It's not a one size fits all. And it's not okay to say, well, I tried that, it didn't work for me. No, you tried that one person. That one person didn't work with you. Try another. You got to keep trying. You got to keep fighting, because you will find the answers that you're looking for, but you have to have that tenacity. And I know tenacity is in short supply when you're going through depression. I know that, but you have to believe it.
I also want to say, and I'm sorry, but I want to say, when you go into therapy, be open-minded, be open, and it's okay. Like you said, it's okay if you don't necessarily feel like, the therapist is, the right therapist for you. But a lot of times the therapists are talking 20% and you're talking 80%. So they're helping you sift through some of the things that you may be dealing with. And you have to be open and willing to speak and talk. And I'm telling you that if you can do that, regardless of who it is, black, white, Asian, indifferent, it doesn't matter. The therapist is there to help you and guide you to, who you are and who you want to be.
Wow, that's great. That's really challenging, because sometimes we, want to shift gears too quickly. And the reality is, there are nuggets there to build off of, and you have to be open-minded to get those out. So thank you for that. In your Players Tribune story, you wrote about struggling in the shadows, you called it, as an athlete, hesitant to open up about your internal struggles due to pressure to exhibit what you would call mental toughness. I know you have a different definition of that now, but the type of mental toughness that you're referring to, you wrote, that type of mental toughness led me to live half-truths with my parents, friends, teammates, coaches, even my wife. There were times when people in my life would notice bags under my eyes, and I'd have to assure them that it was just because of a bad night's sleep. Things like that went on for years. Talk about that idea of mental toughness, that the old definition that you had that was kind of perpetuated by sports culture and other factors as well, and how that played into it personally for you, what you kind of learned from it looking back now.
Yeah, the old way of mental toughness as a man is like, you have to be, strong for your family. You can't show emotion. You can't, show emotion to your loved ones. Like, you don't need to let your kids or others see you cry. You really have to put on this shield that you're the strongest person on the planet. And what I found out was that that's not totally in being a true man. I feel like now being a man is showing your sensitive side, showing people that you can have emotions, and showing that, if I get scratched, it's okay to cry and show that side, and be vulnerable. And the number one word I used to always say when I first started to go to therapy was vulnerability. It's really you taking the mask off. If, for football players, it's taking the helmet off and asking yourself, okay, who are you without this helmet? Who are you in general? And you can go back to like who you are as a person. And I guarantee you that you'll start to think about all the positivity. Like, man, I'm this, I'm that. I'm great. I've done so much. If it's somebody going to that is a scholar athlete, or is it somebody that just is, in college, that is a achievement. That is something to be proud of. And showing that side, and knowing that it's okay for me to be vulnerable. It's okay for us to have these conversations now, just because I know who I am. I know that I'm not weak because I'm having this conversation. I am courageous, and I am helping so many by just speaking about it. And I want to say that when I came out with the Players Tribune, I had a lot of people hit me up on Instagram, Twitter, and they said thank you. And that's all I can ask for, because it's going to open up the door for them to go get help, to go get the therapy that they need. Now they can take their mask off now and say, hey, I don't want to keep this mask on anymore. I want to be free. And that's what therapy does. It frees you.
Yeah, that's tremendously helpful. And there's so much that we can be doing. There's so much work that needs to be done in sports culture and family culture to help fan that flame of push movement towards freedom for vulnerability and safe spaces for vulnerability. What do you think athletic programs, high school, college athletic programs in particular, can be doing to foster a healthy culture around mental health?
Well, the first thing I would say is, I don't know if, high schools and the collegiate level, well, I know that they have clinicians, but talk about it more is one thing. I think if you can make it a point, because now with just the world in general, like we have so much going on with our younger generation, and mental health is at an all-time high. So if you talk about it within your athletic association, or if it's in high school, and now you're giving the kid a choice. You're giving them an opportunity to hear, things that they might be dealing with, right? You bring somebody in that kind of like speaks about the mental health, that somebody that looks like them, whether he's black, white, or whatever, like the person is what we're talking about. The person is who we are as young adults. They're going to look at us and go back to their room and say, wow, I'm dealing with that. Like I want to talk to that person more. I need to, because I remember me being young, and I was a sponge when I was young. And I think that's a lot of us. And nobody really talks about mental health enough, because in the sports world, it's like, whether you're playing soccer, whether you are playing football, whether you're playing basketball, men and women, it is a aura that is like, you got to figure it out. You got to be mentally tough. But what is the definition of mental toughness? We have to redefine mental toughness in our high schools and in our in colleges. And I think once we start doing that, once we have more people speak up, I'm going to try to go to colleges. I'm going to try to do as much as possible, but we have to make it known that this is an issue, and we can save our kids if we just speak up and talk.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much. That's really impactful. Thanks for being part of that change. Thanks for being part of the commitment to be a voice to drive that direction, because we need to make some major changes, and not just acknowledging, oh yeah, mental health is important. A lot of times I feel like in athletics, it's a more reactive response than proactive. Like, well, we'll respond if there's someone that like is in a crisis, like we'll be there. We're prepared for that, or we think we are. But what about all of the work that needs to be done, honestly, to promote mental health in all of us? Because in this day and age, it's not just a select few who are struggling with mental health. I mean, at different points in our life, I bet everyone experiences mental health struggles. So why not make it a part of the culture, just in the same way we're trying to, teach health and, physicality and taking care of our vessels. we need to take care of our mental status as even, just to do life well, but of course, even as a performance enhancement. If we have healthy minds and healthy bodies, that's going to make the true, healthy athletes. So I appreciate you being a part of that work. One of the things, yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I wanted to say one more thing. I think it should be a part of the curriculum too. Mm-hmm. I think if there is a psychiatrist on site, it's something that we actually learn about, and that we know the symptoms. We know everything that comes with mental health. So when you are feeling those things, when you're feeling, like you're sad and you're lonely and you can't seem to figure out, like, why am I feeling like this? 9 times out of 10 is because you are depressed, or it's because you're dealing with some form of anxiety.
Yeah, absolutely. That self-awareness is the most important first step, right? In creating that movement towards coming to a better place. And so if we can teach ourselves to be more self-aware and identify it when it comes on, that's when we can kind of catch it at its smaller levels, or,
right,
however you might phrase that, and do the work then, so that it doesn't get to these crisis points. And if it does, obviously we got to deal with that as well. But there's so much that can be done along the way. As someone myself who struggles with depression, and in the last couple of years, anxiety as well, like, I understand now my triggers and I feel it coming on. And I have a journal that I've written out of the things that help me in those moments, because in that moment, you don't feel like doing the work to make it go away. But if you already can do that pre-planning, where you have it written out for yourself of what are the things that can, remind yourself, what are those things that feed your soul and that get you to better places, and to just do something, do one of those things.
Right.
I mean, honestly, I've had like 100% success rate with that strategy of dealing with it when it's smaller and identifying it. And I know that, you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes it rolls into something bigger, but that's one of the growth pieces.
You for that too.
Oh, well, thank you. It's a learning process. It's a learning process.
Yeah, me too.
So let's talk a little bit about your passion about purpose. You talked a little bit about that in some other articles I've read that you've written. Tell us a little bit about how your thinking has evolved since those dark days when you were struggling so deeply, and maybe how purpose has played into that transformation for you.
Man, my thought process now is so much different. I am always trying to find ways to better myself with the mental health field, and I always, with purpose and how I found my purpose. In my family, I know that my father and some of my aunts and even my grandmother, they dealt with these things looking back. And now I know that I have a duty to bring that to light for everyone. And that is my purpose. And I always say, what I found out was success is not a destination, but rather a mindset. And a lot of us athletes, we tend to, what the world gives us, Twitter, Instagram, it gives us a lot, but it gives us a lot of false indications. And we tend to think that when we get to a place, we are successful. Like this, that's what success is, not realizing that before you got there, the work that you put in between was your success. That is being successful. Being successful is the long nights, practicing hard, having anxiety and depression, talking to your therapist, becoming a better you, It's all those things. It's everything that makes you. That is you. That is what success means to me. And I want to encourage young people and people of our age to, know that you're successful already. Know that your walk is a success. And if we continue to breathe that through your successful walk, you'll find your purpose.
Wow, that's tremendous. I love that. Thank you. Tell us a little bit about your foundation you're starting, and what we can learn about that, where we can kind of find more information on that.
So the foundation that I've started is called the Circle of M, and it means it's based around mental health, and I call it the Circle of M because I might be the centerpiece, but everything around me is mental health. People around me are mental health. I look at it as, man, we could have and do so many things with that that will help people. So like we are going to start doing workshops to just educate on mental health. I'm not a therapist, but I am becoming a life coach, so I can kind of like be in the gap to kind of like not push, but like kind of, put people in place for young guys to, talk to a therapist and kind of see, what that world looks like. And, for young men and women, having those workshops and having different things like I know we were actually talking about doing like 10 to 15 like boys and then 10 to 15 women. So the same on each side, and taking them through a workshop and letting them know like, okay, these are the symptoms, allowing them to speak about those symptoms, being vulnerable, telling them what vulnerable means. But mostly the Circle of M is just that, bringing awareness, talking about the different things that cause mental health, why mental health happens, and letting them know that it's something that that you can conquer, and that you can be everything you can be with this.
That is awesome. I mean, that is the power of coming to a place of healing. Is now you have this platform, this ability to reach people who maybe other people couldn't, because you understand, you've walked those shoes, and you can help lead them just alongside, but also, towards just that same path of perspective shift and healing. So thanks for doing that work. And that can be any listener out there who has a dark, deep struggle. That can be your story as well. Like this can be redeemed for good, and it will be. But you got to keep fighting. You got to keep finding the places within you to just not give up, and to keep choosing life, and to keep choosing the grit and the battle, and knowing that doesn't mean you're having to do that on your own and like suck it up like you mentioned earlier. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the grit that says, I'm going to keep at this thing called life. It's tremendously hard. Seems easier to be out of the game, but I'm going to stay in the game, and I'm going to talk about it, and I'm going to make my life count, and I'm going to help other people along the way. I can see that for myself. At some point, maybe I'm not there yet, but I can see that at some point I'll be able to help other people. So thank you. We need more.
And that's
like
what
you.
It's for.
Yeah.
And that's what it's for too. Also, it's when you have 10 to 15 people, or maybe 20, now you have people that are coming that, have some of the same issues, and you can see your brother, you can see your sister, and say, wow, like, I love your story. Let me tell mine. And now you have more people telling their story, and it's more of everyone is being freed And now you're creating a world that, mental health does exist, but the existing factor is that no, I'm going to conquer this thing. I'm going to continue to live life and conquer this thing. And also, as for people that can't afford to pay for therapy, I understand that therapy could be, a lot. It could be, high school students that can't afford to pay, or collegiate athletes or collegiate students that have a lot on their plate, that their parents can't pay because they're paying for school, or just things of that nature. I want to be able to give free sessions to people that that really need it, and I think that's going to be very, very beneficial.
Yeah. Are you willing to share like how they get a hold of, is there a website, or is there a way they can connect with you, or is this a local endeavor? What are you imagining there?
So the Circle of Men, we don't actually have an actual website yet, so that is actually coming. So you could expect to see our website come up in maybe the next month or two. But I'm actually, I don't want to let this cat out the bag, but I'm going to talk about it. So I'm actually working with a therapy company. I actually talked to them on Friday. They're called Level, and it's an app that you can access and fill out a questionnaire and find the right therapist for you. And it's a great tool to, okay, I don't really know what therapist I want to use or where I want to go, but this is a company that we're also going to be partnering with. But I will say that our website will be up soon. It's actually in construction right now, because I really, for me, I want it to be right, and it has to be, I want it to be perfect. So when people actually go, they can get everything that they need all in one.
Awesome. They can follow you on Instagram and keep those updates.
Yeah. So my Instagram is moneymark91, MONEYMARC91. I actually need to change that name, but nevertheless, nevertheless, yes, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter, Marcus Smith II on Twitter. And I'm always posting about mental health. I'm always giving gems just about life in general. And, don't be afraid to send me a DM. I like to respond back also. I actually had a guy that hit me up, and he said he was going through a traumatic experience. And I was able to talk to him. I was able to kind of, guide him in the right direction. And I helped him save himself. So don't be afraid to reach out. I'm not going to ignore you. I see all of them. And, it's one of those things like, just thank you. Wow.
That's awesome. All right. So we're going to wrap up with a few really cool concluding questions. Marcus, you were faced with this very dark, terrible place. You fought hard to choose life. At the beginning of this interview, I asked you to do some word association with how you felt about life, how you felt about yourself at that darkest hour. So now on this side of things, what are some words that describe how you feel about yourself and how you feel about life now?
Ooh, I'm getting goosebumps. I feel passionate, confident, purposeful. I feel as a leader. I feel as a conqueror. Those words are me now, and it could be you too. I know that maybe you maybe feeling those same words that we talked about before, as in hating yourself, shame, and not really wanting to talk about it. But therapy and you actually acknowledging that pain is there is the first start to you becoming confident, becoming healthy, becoming mentally strong. That's what mentally strong is being.
Thank you. That's great. And then any last concluding thoughts, both to those athletes? I mean, you kind of just shared about what you would say to athletes, but anything more if you want to add, in particular athletes who are struggling with suicidal thoughts and despair, but also addressing any last thoughts towards the people around athletes who may be struggling and maybe they don't even know an athlete next to them is struggling so deeply. Any last thoughts as we wrap up this really important podcast?
I would say for just athletes in general that I would encourage to, and this is not to scare you. I would just encourage you to look up the actual things that cause anxiety and depression, the symptoms. And if you are going through those things, it's not something that you have to go tell everyone. We want you to be open, but we also, want to protect you. So you going to therapy, you don't have to feel like you have to tell everyone because you have to go through the process. And sometimes the process is not telling everyone. You want to talk to someone that is unbiased, that you don't know, because they won't judge you. They will just allow you to be yourself. And then once you become and start to find yourself, then you can talk about it more to other people because, that's only going to help you and it's going to help other people. So that's the only thing that I would really want to leave with them is to just, stay steadfast in where you are, be proactive in how you're feeling and, don't push it to the side. There's people out there that are willing to help. I know I'm willing to help. And the more and more I talk about it, the more people come out. Even NFL guys, they hit me up and they tell me things that blow me away. So any story, anything, it might make me cry, but hey, that's what we're here for. We cry together. We'll get you to a place where hey, I can do this.
Great. And anything you would add to the support network? Anyone, thinking through even to your own support network when you were deeply struggling and maybe you were hiding it from them, but any encouragements that you would give to people surrounding athletes?
Yes. I would continue to ask those questions. I would continue to, even though they might be, because a lot of times we're looking for a way out. And sometimes we, as men and women, let's just say that we're okay when we're not. And having those conversations with them, even though they don't really want to tell you, you have to be able to communicate and be able to open yourself up and be open with your child, with your spouse, with anybody who's dealing with it. It's uncomfortable at times, but it could save their life just by you caring, just by you, because that's all they want. They just want to know that somebody is listening and somebody cares. So listen and whatever they need, if it's therapy or if they just need a shoulder to lean on, be that shoulder and don't judge and just let them speak.
That's tremendous. Thank you so much, Marcus. This has been an incredible conversation that I hope is just the beginning for so many listeners who are now going to take this, take it to your coach and ask your coach to have everyone listen to this episode and then talk about it, because there is this elephant in the room right now, particularly with sports and mental health. I mean, this is a tough space to be right now in life. And there's a lot of things going on that can cause mental health issues, whether that be the pandemic, whether that be racial injustice, whether that be, political fallout and stress or family life or the stresses and pressures of just regular academics and future careers and all these things. It's a tough spot. And so bring us to your teams, have these discussions and start the conversation and build mental health together. There is support out there for you, and nothing could be more important. So thanks so much, Marcus. Appreciate your time today.
No problem. I really appreciate it. I just want to be a vessel and help. And I'm surprised I didn't cry today. I felt like
it would be okay if you did.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what it's all about. This is what it's all about. So I really appreciate you for having me.
If you are experiencing a crisis of any kind, whether that be anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, bullying, any crisis, free help is available 24/7, 7 days a week. Text TALK to 741-741 and you'll be connected to a trained crisis counselor.